You know that feeling when you first start a new role? Like you get hired, you sign the paperwork, and you have this very specific, neatly bulleted job description.
Oh, yeah. The highly idealized version of your job.
Right, exactly. You're a marketing manager or, a financial analyst. But then slowly, over the course of a few months, you realize you're doing tasks completely outside that official role.
Usually it doesn't even take a few months, honestly.
Yeah, fair point. Suddenly you're writing a bit of code to fix a website glitch, or you're acting as a makeshift HR rep to mediate some dispute.
Or you're trying to figure out a database issue because the IT ticket is taking way too long.
Exactly. And you look at that original job description sitting in your drawer and think, like, who is that person?
Oh, right.
Because that is absolutely not what I do all day.
We have all lived some version of that reality for sure. I mean, the day-to-day execution of a job rarely stays confined to the neat little boxes we draw for them on an organizational chart.
Right. Humans are messy.
Humans are messy, businesses are chaotic, and we tend to just, do whatever's in front of us to get the project across the finish line.
Well, today, our mission is to explore how artificial intelligence is radically accelerating that exact phenomenon.
Yeah, it's putting it into overdrive.
It really is. We're looking at how generative AI is blurring the historic lines of our job descriptions at lightning speed. And it's changing not just how we work, but fundamentally who does the work inside a company.
Which is a huge distinction.
Right. So to get to the bottom of this, we're diving into a July 2026 report from OpenAI. It's titled Work at the Frontier by researchers Caroline Chin and Alex Martin Richmond. And, well, what strikes me immediately is that this isn't a survey.
No, not at all.
We aren't looking at people guessing how much they use AI, right? This is hard behavioral data.
And that methodology is the bedrock of why this report is so compelling. Because surveys are, frankly, notoriously flawed.
Right, people lie or they
Yeah.
misremember.
Exactly. When you ask someone how they spend their day, their answers are often aspirational. They tell you what they think they should be doing.
Like saying you go to the gym 5 days a week?
Yeah, exactly. So to bypass that, these researchers analyzed a random sample of over 800,000 actual, real-world, work-related messages from U.S. ChatGPT business users.
800,000. That is a massive sample.
It's huge. And they took those raw prompts and mapped them against ONET.
And for those unfamiliar, ONET is the U.S. Department of Labor's database, right?
Yeah, it's their incredibly detailed database of occupations. It basically breaks down every recognized job into highly specific work activities.
Okay, so how did they use it?
Well, by comparing what a user was asking the AI to do against the historical government-defined tasks associated with their official job title, the researchers could definitively measure something.
Measure if they were staying in their lane.
Exactly. They could see if people were using AI to do tasks inside their own lane or if they were, swerving into someone else's.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand how our jobs are morphing, we first have to separate the mundane chores from actual specialized work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a crucial first step.
Because, like, if I ask an AI to write a polite email declining a vendor meeting, or to summarize a 50-page PDF I don't have time to read, that doesn't make me a specialist in a new field.
No, it just makes you someone trying to clear their inbox.
Exactly. So what did the data show on that front?
Well, the data reflects that baseline reality. The researchers found that 61.5% of all the work-related ChatGPT messages in their massive sample were classified as generic.
Generic meaning like universally shared tasks.
Right. These are tasks broadly shared across almost all white-collar professions. Writing emails, scheduling, drafting basic memos, summarizing text.
So that accounts for the bulk of the volume.
It does. It tells us that on a purely quantitative level, AI is functioning heavily as a generalized administrative assistant. It's taking the friction out of the universal chores of office life.
But the real disruption isn't the administrative stuff. I mean, the true structural shift happens when we throw out that 61.5% and look at the remainder of the pie, right? The highly specialized work.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
When you isolate purely the non-generic occupation-specific messages, a massive 43.5% of those prompts are classified as cross-occupation.
Wow, 43.5%.
Yep.
I mean, think about the scale of that disruption. Nearly half the time someone is using AI for specialized, complex work, they are actively executing a task that has historically belonged to a completely different occupation.
Basically, They are doing someone else's job.
It forces us to completely rethink how companies divide labor. I look at it through the lens of a Swiss Army knife analogy, but with a twist.
Okay, let's hear it.
So before AI, you were hired to be the knife blade. You were a specialist. If a project suddenly required a corkscrew, you didn't try to twist the knife blade into a cork.
Right, because that would break the knife and ruin the wine.
Exactly. You went and found a different specialist, someone hired specifically to be the corkscrew, because the limitation was your own cognitive ability and training.
Yeah, you only knew how to be the blade.
Right. But AI isn't just handing you a corkscrew, it's acting as a cognitive muscular system that twists it for you. You don't need to know the physics of removing a cork, you just need to know where to point the tool.
That is a great way to put it. You're suddenly equipped to execute functions you were never designed or trained to do.
So how does this impact, like, economic theory?
Well, what's fascinating here is how fundamentally this challenges traditional labor economics. For decades, economists relied heavily on a framework established back in 2003 by David Otter, Frank Levy, and Richard Murnane.
Okay, the 2003 framework, how did that work?
Think of their model like a fixed combo meal at a fast food restaurant. You buy a specific job, and it comes with a burger, fries, and a drink.
The tasks are a specific, indivisible set.
Exactly. When automation came along, economists would look at that fixed combo meal and ask, can a machine fry the fries?
And if yes, that portion of the job is automated.
Right. But they assumed the worker would just keep making the burger and pouring the drink. They assumed the boundaries of the job were static.
It was very plug and play.
Very much so. But generative AI blows up the combo meal entirely. The data shows us that the set of tasks a worker does is totally fluid.
They are just sticking to the burger.
No, workers are actively testing and recombining tasks on the fly. They're walking into the kitchen, using the AI, and suddenly deciding to serve sushi.
Huh. Just making it up as they go.
Yeah, and they're doing this entirely on their own, long before corporate leadership even realizes what's happening, let alone, invents new job titles to reflect it.
Because the technology drops the cost and the barrier to entry for performing complex activities.
Right, and human beings intuitively adapt by grabbing whatever tools they need to solve the problem in front of them.
Which naturally leads us to the mechanics of this shift. Because if people are crossing these occupational lanes in such massive numbers, like, which lanes are they crossing into?
Right, whose jobs are being borrowed from the most?
Exactly. So the researchers broke the workforce down into 8 specific groups, right? Customer experience, design, engineering, finance, HR, legal, marketing, and sales.
Yes. And the patterns that emerged out of those 8 groups really highlight 2 distinct behaviors. We have the importers and the exporters.
Okay, break that down for me.
So importers are professions that draw heavily on tasks from other fields to get their own jobs done.
Yeah.
And exporters are professions whose historical tasks are frequently being attempted by everyone else in the building.
Okay, let's dive into the importers first. The data shows customer experience, design, and HR are leading the pack here. Customer experience has a 77% cross-occupation share when they do specialized work.
Which is massive.
Yeah, and design is at 75% and HR is at 69%, but I want to focus on design for a second because the mechanics of why they import so much is really revealing, right?
Oh, totally. Designers draw incredibly heavily on outside tasks. Over a third of their total AI use, so 35.2% of their entire volume of prompts, is devoted to tasks from completely different fields.
Why is that? Why so much borrowing?
It comes down to the nature of their work. A designer rarely creates in a vacuum. If they're building a wireframe for a website, they need placeholder marketing copy.
Right.
If they're mocking up an app interface, they need a basic piece of code to test if the layout functions.
And before AI, they had to wait for a copywriter or an engineer to give them those assets.
Exactly. Or they just had to use that boring lorem ipsum filler text.
Right, the fake Latin.
Yeah. But now they just prompt the AI to act as the copywriter and the coder.
Okay, but nobody's returning the favor, right? Nobody else is doing design work.
That is the crucial flip side of the equation. While designers pull tasks from all over the building, design tasks themselves only account for 1.7% of the AI messages sent by workers in other fields.
Oh no, 1.7%. Why so low?
Well, design is highly subjective. It requires aesthetic judgment, spatial awareness, a deep understanding of visual hierarchy.
So AI can generate an image, sure.
Yeah, it can make a picture, but a non-designer usually lacks the vocabulary and the eye to prompt an AI into creating a truly functional, on-brand corporate asset.
Got it. So designers import massive amounts of utility, but their core skills are heavily insulated from being exported.
Exactly.
That brings us to the ultimate exporters, which are engineering and finance. The data shows these two fields are essentially bleeding their historical tasks to everyone else in the company.
The numbers are pretty stark here. Calculating financial data is a top 3 finance task attempted by every single non-finance user group in the study.
Wait, every single one?
Every single one. Whether you're in HR, marketing, or sales, you are crunching financial numbers. And similarly, troubleshooting computer applications or systems is a top 3 engineering task for all non-engineering users.
I mean, think about the friction this removes, though. If I'm, say, a sales rep on the road and I need to calculate a complex profit margin with variable discounts for a client and I need it in 20 minutes.
You can't afford to email the finance department and wait 2 days for a spreadsheet.
Right. Finance tasks are highly structural and rules-based. AI is brilliant at taking unstructured data, like my messy notes on a client deal, and applying rigid financial formulas to it.
Yeah, you just drop the numbers into ChatGPT, ask for the margin analysis, and you have your answer. The bottleneck is completely gone.
And the same logic applies to engineering. People are impatient. If a software tool breaks, instead of filing an IT ticket, they just paste the error code into the AI and ask for a fix.
It is the democratization of rules-based, specialized tasks. But there is one group in the data that doesn't fit cleanly into either the importer or exporter box.
They sit right in the middle, right? Acting as a massive hub for both.
Yes.
Marketing.
Marketing. So what's their deal?
Mm.
Marketing tasks travel the furthest of any field analyzed. They account for 8.9% of messages among workers in all other fields.
That's the highest export rate in the entire sample.
Yep. Everyone, regardless of their actual title, is asking AI to create promotional materials, draft social media posts, or help with sales copy, because the ability to persuade and communicate is universal.
Sure, everybody needs to pitch something at some point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yet marketers themselves are also incredibly heavy importers. Over 24% of their messages are devoted to tasks from other occupations.
Because modern marketing requires so much deep data analysis and technical execution now.
Precisely. They're borrowing from finance and engineering constantly.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and frankly, where I have to push back a bit on this whole trend.
Okay, let's hear it.
If a salesperson is doing margin analysis and an HR rep is writing Python scripts and everyone is drafting marketing copy, isn't a lot of this work going to be, well, terrible?
That is a very valid concern.
Because if I use AI to write a Python script, I don't actually know if the code is clean, secure, or scalable. It might run once and then crash the whole server. Are we looking at a future where specific roles disappear and corporate America just turns into a giant, amorphous, generalist blob of people confidently doing jobs they aren't qualified for?
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the data pushes back against that generalist blob theory.
Really? How so?
Roles aren't disappearing, and the core of specialization is not dead. The key word here is that AI makes a task much easier for an outsider to attempt. But the core occupational center of these jobs remains highly intact.
Okay, so there is a difference between a task and a function.
An enormous difference. An HR rep using AI to write a script to sort a spreadsheet of employee names, that's a task. It's a localized, low-stakes attempt.
Right.
But if your company is building a consumer-facing software product that needs to securely handle millions of credit card transactions, you cannot hand that to the HR rep with ChatGPT.
You definitely need a senior engineer for that.
Exactly. Specialists are still absolutely critical for expert-level judgment, for complex problem-solving, and most importantly, for reviewing and validating the output of these tools at scale.
So the division of work is shifting, but it's not disappearing.
Right. The boundaries of what you can accomplish independently on a Tuesday afternoon are expanding, but the deep expertise required to anchor a department is still required.
Now, this boundary-crossing behavior isn't happening in a vacuum, and it isn't uniform, right? The report zeroes in on a really distinct variable that dictates how heavily people rely on AI to cross occupational lines. And it all comes down to the size of the room you're standing in.
Yes, the size of the workspace is a crucial driver of this behavior. The researchers isolated what they call typical volume users, so the middle 50% of the pack in terms of how many messages they send.
Okay, middle of the bell curve.
Right. For these typical users, cross-occupation use sits at 18.9% in micro workspaces. We're talking about tiny organizations, usually with just 2 to 5 seats.
And as the company scales up, the behavior changes.
Dramatically. When you look at larger workspaces, meaning companies with 101 or more seats, that boundary-crossing behavior drops down to 16.3%.
So the larger the company, the more people stay in their own lane.
Exactly.
I look at this through the concept of the startup hat rack.
The hat rack.
Yeah, so if you work in a 100-person enterprise and you're a salesperson who suddenly realizes you need a custom graphic for a big pitch deck, what do? You walk down the hall, you find the marketing department, and you hand the task over to the designated graphic designer.
Because the specialist is already on payroll and the corporate infrastructure dictates you use them, it's often more trouble to try and do it yourself than to just follow the established process.
Right. But if you work in a 3-person startup, you don't have a marketing team. You don't have a finance department. There is no one down the hall.
So true.
So you look at the empty startup hat rack, you pull down the marketing hat, you put it on your own head, and you open up ChatGPT.
I love that. Yeah. For small businesses, AI acts as the missing specialist.
It's incredible. It allows a tiny team to operate with the functional bandwidth of a much larger organization. They can suddenly attempt complex financial modeling or robust market analysis that historically would have required a dedicated 6-figure hire.
It acts as a massive economic multiplier for small and medium-sized businesses. It levels the playing field in a way we really haven't seen before. However, the researchers found a fascinating caveat here.
Oh, what's the caveat?
This trend, where smaller companies cross boundaries more often, it does not hold true for the heavy users.
You mean the top 25%? The power users who are living inside the AI all day?
Yes, for those heavy users, the size of the company doesn't dictate their cross-occupation behavior at all. The researchers theorize that these power users are utilizing high volumes of AI prompts to do highly iterative, deep dive work strictly within their own core specialty.
Oh, I see. So an engineer isn't using their 1,000 prompts to do HR work. They're just running endless loops of code refinement. Or a financial analyst is asking the AI to check, recheck, and stress test complex data models from 20 different angles. They're doing a massive volume of AI work, but they aren't straying from their lane.
Right. High volume doesn't necessarily mean high breadth. For the top quartile of users, AI is a tool of incredible depth. They're drilling straight down into their own expertise, using the machine to do the heavy lifting of iteration.
So bringing all this together, we have a pretty clear picture. The tasks are moving, people are routinely taking on the responsibilities of other departments. Small businesses are leaning into this to survive and compete with the giants.
Yeah, that's the current state of play.
But how does this change the larger workforce landscape? Because this level of disruption has massive ripple effects beyond just an individual's daily to-do list.
It really does. The ripple effects operate on several critical levels, starting at the very top with government and economic policy.
Okay, how so?
Well, organizations like the Department of Labor, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Federal Reserve, they all rely on historical definitions of jobs to track employment trends, wage growth, and the overall health of the economy.
Right.
But if their data sets only measure jobs based on historical ONET descriptions, their data will slowly but surely diverge from reality.
Because the jobs are changing on the ground.
Yes. If the government thinks a marketer only does X, Y, and Z, but in reality, marketers are now heavily doing A, B, and C with AI, the map of the economy no longer matches the territory.
That's a huge problem. You risk setting macroeconomic policy, interest rates, and, federal retraining programs based on phantom job metrics that basically no longer exist in the real world.
It's like a city planner trying to route traffic using a map from 20 years ago. The physical roads have completely changed, but they're still looking at the old blueprint.
That is a scary thought for the economy. But what about on the ground level for you listening to this right now? How does this change the daily reality of the worker?
For the individual, this creates an urgent demand for an entirely new type of training.
Training in what exactly?
In evaluation. If you're using AI to attempt tasks outside your core expertise, your value is no longer just in executing the work. Your value is in evaluating it.
Right. Say you're that marketer writing a bit of code. You now have to possess enough adjacent knowledge to know if the AI is hallucinating or if it's giving you a secure, functional output in a field you were never formally trained in.
Exactly. You have to become a competent editor of disciplines you haven't actually mastered.
And that leads directly to the ultimate nightmare scenario for enterprise organizations, which is accountability and governance.
Oh yeah, the legal and structural headaches are just beginning.
Let's play out a scenario here. That same marketer uses AI to write a script for a promotional pop-up on the company website. They deploy it without an engineer reviewing it because the AI told them it was flawless.
Classic mistake.
Right. And then the script creates a memory leak crashes the CRM, and takes down global sales for 6 hours. Who takes the blame?
That is the million-dollar question.
Is it the marketer for stepping out of their lane and deploying code? Is it the engineering team for not having strict technical guardrails in place? Or is it leadership for encouraging employees to be scrappy with AI?
It creates a massive governance vacuum. Organizations are currently operating entirely in the dark on this. They're going to need incredibly clear, explicitly documented processes regarding review and accountability.
They really are.
Companies have to decide on a very granular level when it is acceptable for an employee to use AI to cross an occupational boundary independently, and at what threshold of risk a human specialist must be brought in to sign off on the final product.
So what does this all mean? For you, the listener, the ultimate takeaway here is that you need to be mentally and professionally prepared to manage and evaluate tasks you were never formally trained for.
Absolutely. The days of comfortably saying, "That's not in my job description," are rapidly coming to an end.
Yeah, you are no longer just the executor of your specific historical tasks. You're becoming a manager of an AI assistant that can do a little bit of everything.
Your future value in the marketplace is going to increasingly be tied to your ability to orchestrate tasks across boundaries.
Exactly. To know when to trust the machine's output, and crucially, to know when your own lack of expertise requires you to call in the human specialist.
This raises an important question, and it really represents a massive paradigm shift in how we think about labor market policy moving forward.
What's the question?
Well, for years, the only question anyone asked about artificial intelligence was, what will it automate? We viewed the technology entirely through the lens of subtraction.
Right, like what tasks are we losing? What jobs are disappearing?
Exactly. But this behavioral data forces us to ask a completely different and frankly much more vital question. Which new bundles of human and machine activity will become viable, and who will be prepared, permitted, and paid to perform them?
That is powerful. We are moving from an era of subtraction to an era of recombination. So, to wrap up our journey today, AI is drastically expanding the boundaries of day-to-day occupations. We are actively borrowing tasks from marketing, engineering, and finance to create entirely new, hybridized bundles of work.
And it's happening at a blistering pace.
It really is, especially in smaller organizations where AI is acting as the ultimate generalist colleague, allowing 3 people to do the work of 30.
The landscape is fundamentally shifting beneath our feet. The job you were hired to do yesterday is likely not the exact job you'll be doing tomorrow, regardless of what your HR file actually says.
Which leaves us with a final, rather provocative thought for you to ponder as you look at your own daily workflow.
Oh, this is a good one.
If AI allows you to successfully take on 20% of your colleagues' job responsibilities, and they, using the exact same tools, can suddenly do 20% of yours, how exactly should your company evaluate your performance?
Right. When bonus season comes around, are you being paid for your official historical job title? Or should you be compensated for the entirely new, expanded bundle of cross-functional tasks that AI has empowered you to accomplish?
I think a lot of HR departments are going to be losing sleep over how to structure those compensation packages very soon. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep adapting, and as always, stay curious.